Favorite
Yeah,
band. Okay, good.
that's
Amazing.
good. Okay,
All right.
so hello everybody. Welcome to today's Redbrick event. Today we have Ben McMahon to talk about blockchain, so I'll let him take it away.
Morning, afternoon, evening, folks, depending on when you woke up. I have been up a while, but I will not pretend I've been out of bed at any real speed. Hope everyone's doing well. So I'm going to talk today about blockchain and kind of where it makes sense and where it fits in the world and why that is the case. Um, So I will get into this kind of a bit more in the slides, but it's like blockchain has become this kind of fun word to say, like Kubernetes or like big data. It doesn't mean anything. So I'm hoping to try and like cut away some of that. So this is going to be Fleetwood Mac themed. Unfortunately, the Fleetwood Mac is quite forced. I mainly want it for the poster, but look, it is what it is. So I want to kind of address some like common presumptions made about blockchain as a technology, the kind of products that come out of it, where they kind of fit in, and the kind of things that a tractor would immediately come out with. So first off the bat, people think it's a fad, right? And maybe a couple of years ago, you could have been concerned about it, but I think at this stage we can safely say it is not a fad. It's got products out there. It's being used by real people, and even without the real businesses behind it, you can even hear from the amount of hype around things like Bitcoin, altcoin, and NFTs, which I will mention, by the way, if people are confused about those. That it has enough excitement behind it to be fun, but even there are real solutions behind it that are a bit more concrete and definitely have a lot of legs to them. So there's multiple projects that kind of come out of the initial blockchain, as in what was defined in the Bitcoin white paper. It is still used for Bitcoin, but its application has been taken to other places, and that's kind of like what I was talking about: cryptocurrency, DLT, which is distributed ledger technology, DeFi, which is decentralized finance, as in finance, but without a central controlling institution, and a whole lot more. Some people will say it's not useful as compared to an alternative, like just an SQL database or whatever you want, and that really does depend on how you use it. A lot of modern tech, as I was kind of mentioning, suffers from what I felt like was the Mandela effect, effectively, where we all kind of agree it's a solution to everything. Like there's a solid, and it's still kind of going on, where people are like, we'll just put it in Docker, or we'll just put it in Kubernetes, and that will somehow make your code better or work more. And what you find is that's generally not the case. Generally, it makes your life a little bit harder, unless you know why you're doing it. So you need to remember what the initial kind of application and justification for the tech is. What's the problem you're trying to actually solve? And the other thing is that it's confusing, and I promise you, it's not that confusing. There's a lot of things we can relate it to right off the bat, and I'm kind of hoping that by the end of this talk, people will have an understanding in the sense of what blockchain is, how it's made up, and where it makes sense. And I'm going to try and keep it to no buzzwords, no jargon. I will reverse explain the buzzwords and tell you here's what this is used for, but I'm going to try and leave them out of the actual description of what it's like. So I think someone's deleted part of this slide on me. Oh well. So what is a blockchain? A blockchain is a Merkle tree. So a Merkle tree it's just a tree. So each node, the thing differentiated from a normal tree is that each node n has a hashed copy of the data from the previous node as an n as one. And why that's important, it means that if you change the components of n minus 1, and you're looking at the previous hash of n, they won't match up. So you can tell, you can have this built-in tamper detection, and that's to say that it is cryptographically verifiable or cryptographically secure. So, and that's kind of the words. Oh, look, a reverse transition. I tricked myself. So it's like a tree, but it's cryptographically verifiable, like I was saying. That is the big difference between that and any other tree data structure. So a fun fact, the best Merkle tree I can give you right off the bat is Git. Git is a Merkle tree. It is the one that everyone's probably most familiar with. It's not as alien a concept as you thought it was. And so then it comes into a question. It's like, there's a whole lot more to this that I'm kind of skipping over, like how you resolve deviating histories in blockchain, because that's an important topic, but it's kind of too meaty, I think, to talk about right now. It's an interesting topic to read about. Effectively, the things you do are very similar to how you'd rebase in Git or merge in Git. Same principles, just used differently. So that kind of brings to the question, well, what is the difference between blockchains and just a Merkle tree? Because you can just implement a Merkle tree and stick it in a file. And that's what a Git history is. Well, so the big thing about blockchain is that usually your ledger is entirely distributed. And the only time that's not the case is where it's partially distributed. So the big thing is that we want to share a ledger with other people. So if anyone who's done the kind of distributed computing module in the fourth year, distributed computing is for performance, but not for blockchain in this context. But the two things we really care about are consistency and consensus. You don't want different parts of your software to disagree. And in blockchain, on top of that, you don't want different parties to a transaction to disagree. So like I was talking about, speed is not the number one concern. And, it can be, though. Like if you're a bank and you're trying to process transactions, speed is pretty good. To go off on a little bit of a tangent, actually, no, I'll keep that tangent for later. We'll save that for later on. So with Git trees, the way we manage them is by having a central one that we merge our personal copy of the tree into and out of. So everyone's used either GitHub, GitLab, or Git. There's 100 other implementations, but effectively there is a master tree that everyone accepts as the main one, and then you make a copy of it, you make a change, you propose a change. That is the idea behind pushing code and then merge requests on top of that. No bullshit to tangents. I know I broke that rule immediately, but that's why I stopped myself. So the difference with that and a distributed ledger, it means that we have two independently kept and verifiable ledgers by either participants. And the participants can either be in the entire network, as in the case of Bitcoin and like any other, almost all of the other cryptocurrencies, I think use the exact same thing. Like a publicly traded NFT exchange would be the exact same. Or in private blockchains, which I can touch on later on, just the participants of the transaction. But the thing being is anyone who cares should know. And that's how you will kind of split the two up. So what is a blockchain bonus round? For those interested, and I will check out the slides, put it afterwards, there are many different things that like deviate blockchains. There's proof of work, which is what mining is. Mining is proving that you did work. There's proof of stake, which is an interesting concept that no one seems to like, but it's kind of cool. That's interesting. And there's private blockchains, which is where the people who can process the transaction are defined by the operators of that network. There's BFT, which is Byzantine fault tolerance, not Byzantinian like you think, which is effectively, dealing with nodes disappearing out of nowhere and needing them for transactions and how you resolve that. And you've got public, private, hybrid, and sidechain blockchains. I'm not going to go into those too much, but public is Bitcoin. Private is something that you might run as a group of businesses or like a consortium. A hybrid is where you'll track assets both on a chain and in another piece of software. So this would be like if you had something like Salesforce and you wanted to connect it to or something potentially. And sidechain blockchains where you've got effectively two dimensions of blockchain is probably the TLDR I can give on that one. So that's kind of a very high level, hot and fast overview of what the tech is. But can you use it? Yes, you can. To be read as in, can you kick it? Yes, you can. Blockchain has a use. But like I mentioned before, using it in the wrong place like anything will be a pain. An utter pain. But I guess the thing is, what is the right place? Okay? So, like any bit of technology, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Do you have something that you need to know the history of? Should other people know or care about this history? And if you've kind of answered both of those questions, yes, then blockchain might be the right thing for you. So why should you as a student or anyone care about blockchain? Yeah, not like Django for the front end. We don't talk about Django. So a regular database by architecture cares about almost entirely on how things are. You don't care about the transactional nature. You store data, you query it. It's about how things are today, and the history is irrelevant. There are cases where you'll implement that in by hand, but generally speaking, what they're designed to do is storage and retrieval. Blockchain by architecture cares almost entirely about the provenance and the history of an object. I use the word provenance because it makes sense in an art point of view and an artifact point of view, in the sense that you really care about not just its current state, but who owned it and what the kind of changing of hands of that object has been over time. Have I skipped a slide? I feel like I have. Oh, I will mention this. Kind of the big application like this, right off the top of the head, you're thinking of art, not NFT art even, just like normal art, but an NFT is what you use to track it. Deeds to a house, and foreign exchange. Those are all kind of things that we want to know where money has been and gone, or where an asset's been and gone. And then there's kind of the final criticism that kind of encompasses those two, which is it's a fad or it's unnecessary. And this is where I kind of forced my Fleetwood Mac in, and said, if you don't love it now, you're never going to love it. If you are going to come in with the attitude that it's rubbish, then you won't ever want to use it. And it's the same with anything that's kind of more complicated. If it seems hard and you don't believe it's got a use, you're not going to touch it. So like any technology that's popular, you kind of hear too much about it. It's kind of thrown at you, and the articles aren't always written by people who know how it works, and are kind of just slapping on top of everything, or taking a kind of, second step removed. My mate explained this to me, and then I told my dad about it, and here's what his thoughts are. It's an informed opinion, but it's not necessarily well constructed. So you end up losing the kind of things that blockchain as a technology has the ability to solve, right? So it all seems like a bit too much. Like, why do we know? Why do we care? It's like, I know I've used both Docker and Kubernetes as a bit of a straw man here. And while it's kind of harsh that I do that, I think it's kind of fair, because both of those things are used quite often as super glue, and to kind of hacks them together and like as a default solution. Where that kind of has manifested in blockchain is people want to stick a blockchain in because it's cool. So blockchain is kind of like a screwdriver. It's very, very good at one problem. It's very, very good at tightening screws. But if you use it to bash in nails, you're going to really end up hurting your hand and probably not get that, nail driven. The good news is, though, is that the problems it does solve is something that a lot of companies, a lot of institutions, and a lot of research institutions like colleges really do care about. So where does it fit in? I can't really go into all of these things because all of them are their own kind of like research topic in and of themselves. But it kind of lists applications right off the bat as cryptocurrencies, which everybody knows and has heard too much about. Your blockchain, your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, you've probably bought them at some point, right? You've got smart contracts, which are very good in terms of defining a business relationship. You've got NFTs, which stands for a non-fungible token. A non-fungible token is effectively a unit of record that represents a real object. So it sounds very funky. It sounds very nonsense, and it's because it's only quoted as NFT. It is a digital token that cannot be split or divided that represents a real object. Ironically, immediately the first thing people did was that they'd share portions of an NFT. But one can own, many people can own shares of a business. So it is theoretically possible, but an NFT represents one thing. You can't cut a painting in half and each take half of it, although you might both co-own it. So a big thing that this is used for is stuff like energy services. So literally selling megawatts of energy or the kind of raw resources you put into them. Supply chain, MES, which stands for manufacturing something software, which is effectively the idea of manufacturing or monitoring a manufacturing process from the raw materials you put into the things you get out. And then counterfeiting. So, verifying that this thing is real. If you think of a painting with a signature, you'd have to get it could be enterprise. When you think of a signature on a painting, you normally have to get an expert to come in and verify. I've seen 1,000 of these signatures. This is, I don't know, LeBron James signed this basketball because we've seen the other ones, and they'd look for features in the handwriting. With anti-counterfeiting and NFT, there's a private key, and that's it. It's cryptographically verifiable that is the real deal. And DeFi, which I kind of mentioned earlier, is decentralized finance. It's finance without a central bank, really. It's kind of the short version of it, but it manifests in other ways. And central banks are interested in it, so that's kind of an ironic turnaround. But so I think the best way to kind of illustrate this is let's go through a really quick example of a smart contract. So a smart contract, so in its entirety on the blockchain, it will represent a full block, but there'll be multiple transactions. And when you think of a deal or a contract, there are multiple, phases to it. So I'm going to buy a Freddo. I've walked in, I've brought my Freddo up to the counter. So I've got all the stuff together that I want, and I've got my wallet out. I'm going to pay the shop 40 cents. He's going to give me the Freddo. That's fine. There's two transactions. There's one entire contract, if you like, that's performed there. So like I said, one block, two transactions. Both are validated, as in the shopkeeper has legal tender to the value of 40 cents. Two 20-cent coins, 4 10s. I'm not going to show up my multiplication here, but you can get the idea of that one. And I ate the Freddo, so I know it was a Freddo, and I've got a receipt, so I know I bought it. So we can now commit this transaction to the change, right? To the chain even. We have now a record that we can put in stone, right? So I think with that, I'm going to kind of park it here. I'm going to go through and say that is a very overarching and I guess, quick rundown of what a blockchain is and where it fits in. There's a whole lot more I could have talked about, but I didn't want to bombard you with information for like, a half an hour of kind of blockchain. So has anybody got questions? I am actually still reading the Twitch chat. It is quite odd doing a talk where you don't have much audience engagement, so I'm just literally living off of what the Twitch chat can say or give. So I'm going to scroll back in case I missed stuff. Let's see. Morning doesn't exist. That's true. Okay. Any Bitcoin? No Bitcoin. No NFTs. Redbrick could implement Bitcoin. I don't know what it'd be used for. I guess it could be like a fiat currency for computing. I don't know. You can worry about that, James, when you do the VMs. How can we send to business students? Well, I think the thing with blockchain is that taking something like this presentation and contextualizing it for a business case is very important, because there's a lot of buzzwords in kind of blockchain and in DLT and in DeFi and all this kind of stuff. Those are buzzwords in themselves a little bit. And it's very jargon heavy. And that's because there's actually a lot of interesting research concepts inside of them. Like solving deviating chains, consensus, Bayesian fault tolerance, like there's so many little bits that go into it. And that's before you start talking about the cryptographic layer, which is just a whole field of research in and of itself. So having ability to kind of go, I understand this technology, I know what it does, here's what's the problem it'll solve for you when you're trying to look at it from a business case point of view. And actually, if you want to use it in a college project, it's very important to go in with an idea of, well, why am I using this instead of SQL or something more pedestrian, because that's what you'll be asked. So I know that wasn't really a question, but I've answered it anyway. No death scripts here. Django for front end, a mailing list manager. Yeah, not great. I wish I'd put more Fleetwood Mac in, but there you go. I think I tried to address NFT. If my kind of explanation wasn't clear, stop my stream so I can see big screen. Oh, no, that won't work. I think I'll just get Ethan back. Oh, maybe it will. Oh, it is just me now. Ooh, exciting. I'm in charge. So, yeah, I think I kind of touched on what NFT is. It's kind of been really exciting lately because it's kind of made a new form of art, but it should be used to distribute the kind of traditional kind. IMO, that's an opinion, not a fact. But so yeah, I think there's no real questions. So I think that comes in quite neatly under the 20-minute mark. So thanks for having me, folks. I hope people understand or have a better idea what's going on. You can find me on Discord if you do have questions about all these little things, or if your reading takes you down a rabbit hole that you don't quite understand. So yeah, thank you, folks. Have a great evening, and hopefully I'll be back again soon with another wild tour of something else interesting.
Oh yeah, thanks once again, Ben. It was a great talk. We're glad to have you on, and if anyone does have any more questions, of course we're available in the Discord and anywhere else he's mentioned.
Or McMahon@redbrick.com. That email does go somewhere, I promise. So yeah.
Yep, I think that's it for us today. But thank you everyone for coming along, and we will see you next time.
See you, folks.